All right, NCFA fans, welcome to week 8 in the NCFA. Yes, we are saying this is the last week of the regular season in the National Club Football Association. Let's jump right into it. So, we are going to do a recap of week 7. We've got some players of the weeks to show you, we've got updated power rankings, weekly scores around the NCFA. We've got one reel of video highlights. We're also going to preview week 8 and talk about some conference championship formats. So we're excited. Let's get it going.
Let's roll.
So we've got new players of the week. Dave, what can you tell us about players of the week?
All right. So I think the biggest eye-opening player of the week was Gabriel Gibson for George Mason in their victory. He had 7 sacks, got home 7 times on the quarterback in their win last weekend. And then Mason does a good job of tracking pressures. It's not a stat that the NCFA is tracking across the league, so it's hard to compare him with anybody else. But their statistic has 13 pressures. So 7 times he got home, 6 times he was just about to get home. I don't have in front of me NCFA game stats records, but I would imagine not a lot of guys in the history of the NCFA have garnered 7 sacks in a game. So pretty outstanding game out of him. And then offensively, Gordon State playing Central Georgia Tech. Central Georgia Tech played him pretty well, but Cedrion Brundwich had 105 yards and only 10 carries, so pretty high yards per carry average, and kind of led them on their ground attack in their victories, like 37-6 win.
And Daniel Gibson, I want to know how many passing attempts. Was that Pittsburgh that they played?
Yeah, I didn't look at the full stats, but man, 7 sacks
Because
is crazy.
7 sacks, 13 hurries. If they passed 50 times, he's in on half of those
Yeah, and I
uh,
would
those dropbacks.
venture to guess that he's at least in half of those, 25 times, probably at the most.
Congrats to this week's players of the week.
Yeah, Mason, their first one of the season, so that was cool to get another new team on there.
Definitely. All right, last week I think that we were predicted pretty accurately. By
Sure.
by this point in the season, our calls on how games are going to go is a little bit more educated than earlier in the season. We had number 8 George Mason topple number 15 Pittsburgh. We just talked about that defensive player of the week. He even looks like a monster.
Yeah, and we've seen film on Mason. We didn't get any this week, but we've seen film on him in past shows, and they just got athletes everywhere. And Gabriel Gibson, you see on film how just monstrous and athletic he is. It doesn't this isn't hard to see that. Pitt only scored 6 points when you had that guy perusing their backfield, kind of like he was playing for the offense that much time back there.
I wonder if those 6 points were field goals or if it was a TD.
Yeah, not sure.
That was the lone game in the North Atlantic. Moving on to the South Atlantic, we had Central Georgia Tech ranked number 10 fall to number 2 Gordon State. It looks like Gordon State continues their roll.
Yeah, Gordon State's a great program. So, Central Georgia Tech's a new team. Everybody gets a little bit scared in the NCFA when you got a new team coming in. We've had the apprentice school, and we've had the Florida, whatever team that was, that maybe didn't play by the rules fully. So Georgia Tech got a little bit of a weird rap, but they came in like any other first year team, that normal team, playing okay, goes up against the big boys in Gordon State and played them pretty tough, but Gordon State pulled away at the end. So I think they were happy about staying with them for a while. Gordon State still kind of blowing through everybody. Not quite as impressive as Ohio State in the scores, but they still, outside of losing to one of the best junior colleges in the country, Gordon State's been rolling through all their competition.
Again, looking at the overall scores, all of them were pretty much blowouts. There wasn't really any game this week that was decided by one score or less. All pretty much blowouts. We don't have scores yet for USC or Maryland Prep.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that even happened.
Yeah, but we've got Columbus State dominating Longwood 57-6. I
Yeah,
think
Longwood's struggling this year. We didn't expect them to have a great year, but struggling with numbers and injuries at this point. So Columbus State, pretty good program, not out of what we expected to see there between those two. We were unsure if Longwood is even going to be able to host the game with the numbers they're at.
Moving on to the Great Lakes Conference, number 13 Wright State fell to number 9 Oakland, 3-36.
Yeah, that's one. And some of these games, like the Central Georgia Tech, Gordon State, Wright State, Oakland, at halftime they were close games. So I think this game was real close at halftime, like a one-score game at halftime, and then Oakland blew it out of the water in the second half. Same thing with the Loyola Toledo. I think that was real close at halftime. Wright State got their first win, but I don't think you and I thought that Oakland was going to have any kind of problem with Wright State with the way Oakland's been playing this year.
Right. Moving on to number 1 Ohio State, dominating Denison JV, 40-21.
Yeah, I don't know much about Denison as a program as far as where they're at, but it's a Division III school, so you got to imagine that that's a full-time coaching staff. That's 100+ players in the roster. That's practicing every day with the facilities and whatnot. And for Ohio State to go in there and beat them by 20 points, to me, is just amazing. We both picked Ohio State. We thought they'd win, but no way, shape, or form. I think they're going to go out there and get another blowout victory like they've been blowing out NCFA teams. So, right now, what Ohio State's doing to me is just incredible this year.
Yeah, I was informed that the quarters were 10-minute quarters, not 15-minute quarters.
Yep.
And I expected
it could have been worse for Denison.
Right. It could have been worse for Denison. I also for them to score 40 points in 40 minutes of football is right there. But also I was expecting the game to be closer. Sometimes, when a club football team schedules a D3 program or an NAIA program, whatever, you expect it to be humbling, or at least like something to give your players something that makes maybe another club team not feel as difficult, because you just kind of got it taken to by an NCAA team. But not in this case, man. Like it doesn't matter.
No, exactly. That's why you do it at this level. That's why you do it, is to get some exposure for your guys, and again, it's like playing those tough non-conference games early on, so your conference schedule looks easier. But man, Ohio State's just rolling. It's really impressive what they're doing.
Number 4 Michigan State topples Miami, Ohio, 41-8 at Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great stadium to play in. That's one of the best. Toledo can probably make a stake for that too, but those are the two best places to play at as far as home stadiums. So in their varsity stadium, really cool place to play. Miami's really struggling with numbers. They had low numbers to begin the season, and then they had a bunch of injuries, including probably their best player, their team president Matt Hodge, got hurt. So Miami's in a struggle here to finish off the season, and hopefully they can regroup and come back. But it's not great for a team like that to run into a Michigan State team that's playing really, really good football. So I think this was a whole running clock in the second half, because the score was out of hand at halftime, and Michigan State cements and stamps their trip to a rematch versus Ohio State in the conference title game. We'll get into more of that later, but great win for Michigan State to stay rolling.
Yeah, perfect time to hit your stride. Last game of the week, number 14 Loyola getting dominated by number 7 Toledo.
Yeah, that's another one where Loyola had to go to Toledo. Loyola was, again, struggling with numbers too, and its numbers and injuries. I think they're down to like 17 or 18 players on their roster. So it's been tough this year for some teams. We're still coming back from COVID and whatnot. So not every team has the full foundation that some of the other teams do. So Loyola was able to make it out there. Toledo, coming off their first loss or second loss of the season there a couple of weeks ago or last week, and took it to Loyola. So Toledo still trying to slide into that 4th spot. I know Michigan State's looking to get a win over Ohio State in the conference title game, but you got Michigan State, Toledo, Oakland, who all have a feasible shot, and of course Ohio State. One of those two is going to win the conference title, Ohio State or Michigan State, but all 4 of those really have a legitimate shot at sliding into that 4th seed, depending on how the games go the next 2 weeks.
Right. So on the season, we're 3 games apart, Dave. I think that it's going to be smooth sailing until the playoffs come, and then it's going to.
Yeah, playoffs can be interesting, but we still have a lot to decide. I mean, I think we got 4 playoff spots, and we're going to have six, seven, eight teams that have a legitimate chance to be involved in that. So I think that's the cool part about this year is that wild card thing, something that's really cool. I think that's keeping people engaged a little longer in the season, and I think it's something, hopefully we can kind of keep that model going in future years. I like how it's working.
All right, we're going to start with Central Georgia Tech.
Gordon State just getting a nice big run there.
Athletic quarterback play.
Yeah. I think Central Georgia Tech team that's going to be a force here in future years once they get their footing under them with the first year of everything.
And Gordon State's got the white helmets.
Yeah, blue jerseys, white helmets.
Ooh, didn't hit that hole quick enough. It was there.
And I think what you're seeing out of both teams, I like the quarterback from Gordon State, Neil Howard. He's been a player of the week once, nice ball player. But I think on both teams here, you're not seeing. Sometimes you get film and you see like one team's just overblowing everybody else. The George Mason film we watched a couple weeks ago, they were just dominating, Longwood. But
Look at Gordon State sidelines. They must have a full roster.
They do have a full 50-man roster.
Looks like there's a million players on the sidelines.
Yeah, they actually suited up some extra people, like a practice squad. They only have 50 active guys, but this was their homecoming game. So, But good athletes on both sides of the ball here. Gordon State proving that they're a little bit more experienced and advanced, and I think that's what put the edge over Central Georgia this week. It definitely wasn't an athletes thing. Central Georgia Tech has some athletes there.
All right, we're going to go to Miami, Ohio, and we're going to see Michigan State highlights against Miami.
Yep, we got the stadium there. You can see the MAC logo. Awesome place to play.
This first play here is Ahmad Kareem sack.
Ahmad Kareem, former player of the week here. Yeah, just comes off the edge hot, unblocked, and that's not a good look for an offense to not block the defensive end there. So protection error for sure.
Second play here, we got Jack Donovan to Sam Volt for a 36-yard touchdown.
Yeah, Jack Donovan, great quarterback. Really like what he's been doing this year, and Sam Volk's like his number one guy. So
we're setting up here Jack Donovan to Benji Ogunloy. 68-yard touchdown coming up.
Okay.
He's got
got a little cover two action from Michigan or from Miami, running 3 or 4 verts versus cover two. Hard to stop that. So not a good recipe for defensive coverage versus that spread with a cover two and no adjustments.
On defense here, we've got Josh Langston on a INT coming up.
All right, there's Michigan State bringing the pressure, 6-man pressure. I think maybe Miami quarterback just made the wrong read. He had a guy open in the middle of the field, so the pressure made him force the ball out too soon.
Yeah, here we got Drew Roberts in the defensive backfield getting an INT.
Okay. Again, pressure forcing the guy to make a throw there. That time it was a 4-man pressure. It wasn't even an extra blitz package, just 4 guys. Defensive lineman got home on the 4-man pressure.
Here we got Jack Donovan connecting with John Masterman for a 14-yard TD.
Nice little play action boot there out of the I formation. Nice little package there. Nice wrinkle that, we didn't see that early on in the clips. They were mostly spread. So nice little wrinkle from the OC at Michigan State.
Your quarterback, Jack Donovan, scrambles here for a 20-yard TD.
Nice. Looked like a nice little read action play. Looked like they were reading the middle linebacker there, block everybody else, read the middle linebacker. He bid on the play fake, followed the running back. So Donovan kept it in this huge hole.
Last play of the series here, we've got Josh Broden on the INT.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, that's triple coverage out there, chucking it out.
This has got to be fourth quarter.
Yeah, looks like the score is probably out of hand. They're just trying to get quick scores, throw it up, see what happens type of deal. So, valiant effort from Miami that they've been trucking along with, 15, 16 guys in their roster. That's not easy to play football at any level, and especially going up against one of the best teams in the country, Michigan State, for them to finish the game is impressive, and the fight they showed. So kudos to Miami for that.
All right, so here are the brand new power rankings. This is our top 10. And
No
for
change in
the
the top there. Ohio State, Gordon, Sacred have been kind of holding the top three for the last, I think since the power rankings came out. The biggest jump, I think, is Mason going from 7 or 8 up to fifth, and Michigan State holding the spot at fourth. There's still games this weekend. The biggest game, we'll talk about in a minute, is George Mason Coppin. The winner of that game is going to go to the conference title champ matchup with Sacred Heart. But that's going to be a big game. And I think the winner of that game, regardless of how the conference title goes, still has a legitimate shot at that fourth seed. The loser of that game probably is not going to make the fourth seed. So that's the biggest jump. Toledo and Oakland still in there. Columbus still in there. Milwaukee has one game left. I don't think they're probably a reasonable shot to make the fourth seed with already having 2 losses and not really a big signature win. But that's 9 teams that legitimately are in the hunt for those top 4 spots.
Yeah, there's going to be 6 teams playing for a conference championship, but right now there's 7 in that picture,
Yep.
and all 7 of those teams can ignore the power rankings. If they win, they're in.
Exactly.
Outside of that, we're left with 3 more teams on this list in the top 10 that hope that if 4 of those teams fall, the 3 go on, that maybe it's one of those teams in 7 through 10 might have a shot to rise up to that number 4 spot. So that's the big question mark here. Week 8 preview, we've got Vermont at Clarkson.
Yep, Vermont at Clarkson. I think they've played, they're so close to each other. They've played multiple games. So this is another technically non-conference matchup between those two. I think it's the 4th time they've played this season. So Clarkson has taken it to Vermont, I think, every game so far. They're both struggling with numbers. It should be a good game for both those schools to end on and try to go off on in a winning way to finish their 2022 season.
And then we've got Maryland Prep at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, don't know a lot about Maryland Prep. Pittsburgh's had kind of been an up and down year. They've had some explosive games, and they've had some games they kind of got run through, including last week against Mason. So we'll see what happens, but not knowing a whole lot about Maryland Prep's hard to speak a lot on that game other than Pittsburgh really trying to find some consistency maybe for the first time all year.
I think this next game is the one that everybody in the country has their eyes on. We've got Coppin State at George Mason.
Yeah, without a doubt, the game of the week. Both teams playing pretty good. They both played Sacred Heart and lost really close games. So they're whoever wins that's looking for the rematch up at Sacred Heart. But it's your note there, winning you're in is 100% right. Whoever wins this game is into the conference championship game, and the loser is their chances for that 4th spot take a big hit having 2 losses. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. We've seen a lot of Mason. We've heard a lot about Coppin State, but we haven't seen any real film of them outside of a couple clips, I think, when they played Sacred. So a little bit of an unknown, but they both played Sacred Heart within 1 score. So that's, I think, the mutual opponent that makes me think this is going to be a really good close game.
Miami has folded their season. Their numbers are just hurting too much. So Ohio State's going to have a game played, but an 0-2 win on their season.
Yeah. Same Loyola. Loyola's cashing it in as well because they're down to like 17 players. They just can't make the trip. So both Ohio State and Michigan State going to have a bye week to get ready for the conference championship game. It's good and bad, in my opinion, right there. I'm sure they have some injuries and some stuff. And the fact that both teams are off makes it a little bit easier to chew on. But both those games will not happen this week.
UW Milwaukee going at Wright State.
Yeah, Milwaukee's looking. I mean, if Milwaukee wins, they probably still stay in the discussion as, if everything falls in a certain way, that they could maybe slide into the 4th spot, depending on how big of a win it is against Wright State. But again, Wright State got their first win, looking to try to finish their 2022 season with another win and set up for 2023.
And then we've got Toledo coming up to Oakland.
And that to me is a really important game when you're looking at that wild card 4th spot. The winner of this game has legit opportunity to still slide into that spot, regardless of whether or not they pick up a week 9 game. The loser of this with multiple regular season losses, it's going to be tough to slide in that fourth spot most likely. So this would be a signature win for either of those two to kind of hang their hat on as well. So I think it's a big game for those two programs.
And South Carolina at Gordon State.
Uh, yeah,
That game might not be fun.
I don't think that's happening either.
And then same thing with Longwood
I
or
think both these two South Atlantic Conference games are not happening this week. They're both going to be forfeit wins for the home team. It's just we got some teams in a really tough spot right now. So both those South Atlantic teams are just struggling to get to the finish line here. Low numbers combined with losing guys to injuries throughout the season, kind of not laying it out very strong for those two franchises.
All right, let's pick two games. Well, because you said that there were two games that were most important between Coppin State and George Mason. Who do you got?
Holy moly. I mean, I right now, I really like what Coppin State's doing, getting back into the league and building a foundation. But the way George Mason has been peaking, I just can't. Ever since that sacred loss, which is a 2-point game, they've just been playing dynamite, lights out. I picked against them in Williamson Tech and didn't look good. So I'm going to say Mason's going to win this game as the home team and a team that's just playing really too good at football.
Yeah, I agree. And if you look at that player of the week, man, he looks like a tank. Like I would not want to line
Yeah.
up against that
No,
defensive player
no,
of the week.
that dude is legit. Gibson is
Yeah.
a legit player.
And Toledo at Oakland. I like what Oakland's doing. They kind of got their groove back against Wright State. And I know that Oakland has that glimpse of trying to get that wild card spot. So at home could be their last game of the year. You got those seniors with that glimpse of maybe the wild card. We don't know. So I'm picking Oakland on this game.
Yeah, and I'm not just trying to ride your coattails here, but some insider knowledge I got is that Oakland maybe didn't play their best game against Michigan State, and that could have been gone the other way. So I think Oakland probably at this point of the season is a better football team than Toledo, and I think Oakland's going to get this victory this week and then try to ride out and see what happens with that fourth spot.
So that's the last weekend of the regular season, and there's some conference championship game locks. So we talked about this before in the podcast. The Great Lakes Conference Championship will be Michigan State at Ohio State. And judging on this last week, it'll be George Mason or Coppin State at Sacred Heart for the North Atlantic Conference Championship. And then it'll be Columbus State at Gordon State for the South Atlantic Conference Championship.
Yeah, definitely. We got the one matchup still. This weekend's gonna determine that. If you get on the NCFA website and go to the conference championship page, it has dates, kickoff times, locations, all that stuff. I think we had two games going on Saturday. The Great Lakes games, I think, is going to be on Sunday. So we got some good matches. We're going to have rematches across the board. So Michigan State, Ohio State's a rematch from early on in the season. Columbus State, Gordon State's going to be a rematch where, Coach Spates said Columbus didn't really play their best football against Gordon State, so they feel good about their chances. And then Coppin and George Mason both already lost one-score games or less than one-score games to Sacred Heart. So we're going to get three, what I think are going to be really good matchups, and we'll get three teams that stamp their ticket to the playoffs, and then we get by Tuesday of the week after that, we'll figure out who's gonna be in and that fourth spot. But I would think those three teams, it's going to be interesting because if the top seed undefeated teams win, that's a big if, because I think those other teams could win. All those other teams in the conference championship are also going to have two losses. So you're going to have them with two losses, Oakland or Toledo with two losses, Milwaukee possibly with two losses. The loser of the Coppin State George Mason game is going to have two losses. So you're going to have like six teams with two losses. That power ranking thing is going to be wild on what happens. We're going to have one team really happy and five teams really pissed off about it. If something goofy happens, or Michigan State beats Ohio State, or Columbus State beat Gordon, it's going to be less dramatic because I'm sure the power rankings will slide that one-loss team into the fourth spot for sure. Right. So it could be real simple, or it could be wild, BCS style from like the early 2000s.
Right. It is heating up in the NCFA. Emotions are high. People are starting to bite their nails, and the power rankings are are not as big of an impact as they were last year, which was just 1 and 2. But now the playoffs are back. The playoffs. There's 7 teams. 5 of them are decided. 2 of them are fighting for that conference championship, and then you've got at least 3 other teams that are just looking for that wild card. So they got to win this weekend, and then they got to pray, and then it's just a wait and see for everybody. So it's really exciting right now in club football. I'm excited. This is a great way to end the regular season. And I think that all the teams in the league have done a bang up job this year. It was really cool to see how this season played out. And there's going to be a lot of questions answered in next week's podcast. So join us next week for our first ever postseason podcast. And we will have a better idea of what these conference championships look like. And then we might even have some wildcard predictions for you. So thanks again for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week.